Hello, my name is Anna. I'm 28F and have always been the ugly duckling of my family. My sister, Macy, 32F, has always been the golden child, blonde, tall, conventionally beautiful, married to a successful lawyer named David. Meanwhile, I've struggled with severe acne scarring from my teens, am shorter, heavier, and have always felt like the family disappointment. Before we go any further, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love seeing how far this little story can travel. Let's make this space feel a little more connected, no matter how many miles are between us. Growing up, my parents made it clear who the favorite was. Macy got the nice clothes, the college fund, the encouragement. I got hand-me-downs and lectures about making the best of what God gave me. When Macy married David 3 years ago, it was like they'd won the lottery. He's handsome, wealthy, drives a BMW, and treats my parents like royalty. They practically worship the ground he walks on. Then came the incident that broke my heart. It happened 2 weeks before Christmas last year. I was so excited to introduce my boyfriend Jake to the family. We had been dating for 8 months, and I was head over heels in love. Jake is kind, funny, works as a veterinarian, and somehow sees past all my physical flaws to love me for who I am inside. To give you some context about how differently Macy and I were treated growing up, when Macy turned 16, our parents threw her a huge party at the country club. They rented out the whole ballroom, hired a DJ, and invited half the town. The photos from that night still hang in their living room, Macy in a gorgeous white dress, surrounded by friends, looking like a princess. When I turned 16, I got a small cake at home and a gift card to Target. Mom said they couldn't afford a big party that year, even though Dad had just gotten a promotion. Macy later told me that Mom didn't want to waste money on a party for me, since I probably wouldn't have many friends to invite anyway. She wasn't wrong. I only had 2 close friends, both of whom my family treated politely, but distantly, whenever they came over. The favoritism extended to everything. Macy got a car for her 17th birthday, a cute little Honda Civic in her favorite color. I got driving lessons and was told I could share the old family sedan when needed, which usually meant asking permission and explaining exactly where I was going. Macy got her college tuition paid in full. I got lectures about earning my way and took out student loans that I'm still paying off. Even our childhood bedrooms told the story. Macy's room was redecorated 3 times during high school because she kept changing her mind about colors and themes. My room had the same faded purple walls from middle school until I moved out. When I asked about repainting it, Mom said we should focus on Macy's needs first, since she was the one bringing friends over. The worst part was how they talked about my appearance from such a young age. I remember being maybe 12 years old, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, trying to figure out how to deal with my first pimples. Mom walked in, sighed, and said, "Oh honey, we really need to get you to a dermatologist." Then, almost like a reflex, she added, "Macy never had these problems." As if I'd chosen to have bad skin just to inconvenience her. When my acne got worse in high school, they did take me to a dermatologist, but they complained about the cost constantly. $200 a month for Anna's face medicine, Dad would mutter when paying bills. Meanwhile, they never questioned spending money on Macy's highlights, her manicures, or the personal trainer she wanted before prom. The comments about my weight started early too. Macy was naturally tall and thin, while I inherited Dad's shorter, stockier build. By middle school, Mom was already commenting on my portions at dinner and suggesting I take up jogging like Macy. Macy would sometimes chime in with helpful suggestions about my clothes or makeup, always in that fake sweet voice that made it clear she thought she was doing me a favor. High school was brutal. Macy was homecoming queen, prom queen, student council president. Basically everything I wasn't. She dated the star quarterback, had dozens of friends, and our parents glowed with pride at every school event. I, on the other hand, was in the science club and volunteered at the animal rescue. But those achievements never seemed to matter. When I won a regional science fair, Dad's only comment was, "That's nice, honey," before immediately turning to ask Macy about her upcoming cheerleading competition. The day Macy announced her engagement to David, you'd have thought she cured cancer. Mom cried happy tears. Dad opened champagne. They immediately started planning an elaborate engagement party, called relatives, booked the country club again, and spent weeks fussing over every detail. Macy's ring was gorgeous, a huge diamond that caught the light from across the room. When I started dating Jake, I was nervous about introducing him to my family. But I hoped things might be different now that I was an adult. I thought maybe they'd matured. Maybe they'd see that I deserved happiness too. I spent weeks building up the courage to invite him to family dinner. I had rehearsed what I'd say about Jake, his job, his interests, the way he made me feel seen. I should have known better. When I called Mom to confirm Christmas dinner plans, that's when she dropped the bomb. Honey, she said in that fake gentle voice she uses when she's about to hurt my feelings, maybe you shouldn't come for Christmas this year. I was stunned. What? Why? Well, David will be here, and you know how he gets around certain people. We don't want your face ruining the family photos or making anyone uncomfortable. Before I could even process that gut punch, Dad got on the phone. Some people are just too distracting, sweetie. You understand. Then Macy chimed in from the background. He gets really uncomfortable around ugly women. It's not personal, Anna, it's just how he is. I hung up. And cried for hours. Jake found me curled up on the couch, sobbing. When I told him what had happened, he was furious, absolutely livid, but I begged him not to make a scene. I was used to this treatment, even if it still hurt. So we spent Christmas alone together. And honestly, it was one of the best Christmases I'd ever had. Jake cooked dinner, prime rib, garlic mashed potatoes, green bean casserole from scratch, and homemade rolls that smelled like heaven. He put so much thought and effort into making the day special for us. We exchanged simple gifts. I gave him a vintage veterinary textbook I'd found at an antique shop, and he gave me a delicate necklace with a small sapphire pendant. It matches your eyes, he said. And I almost cried again. No one had ever noticed the color of my eyes before, let alone complimented them. But the real gift came that evening. We were sitting by the fireplace in his apartment, surrounded by wrapping paper, full from dinner, when Jake took my hands in his. Anna, he said softly, I know this year has been hard for you, with your family, with everything they've said and done. I know they've hurt you in ways that cut deep. But I need you to know something, you are the most incredible woman I've ever met. You're kind to every animal that walks into the clinic, even the ones that try to bite you. You remember the names of all our elderly clients and always ask about their grandchildren. You cry during sad movies, and you laugh at my terrible dad jokes. You're beautiful, inside and out. And I can't imagine my life without you. Then he got down on one knee and pulled out a vintage ring, a simple, elegant setting with a diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. My grandmother would have loved you, he said. She always told me to marry someone with a good heart above all else. Will you marry me, Anna? I said yes, through happy, overwhelming tears. And we spent the rest of the night planning our future together. Jake told me more about his family, how his grandparents had started their veterinary clinic with nothing, how his parents had worked hard to build it into a successful practice while always staying humble and grounded. He said his family valued character above all else. They're going to love you, he said. And for the first time in my life, I believed someone truly meant it. I couldn't help but compare it to how David had proposed to Macy. From what I'd heard, it was an elaborate production at an expensive restaurant, photographers hiding in the bushes, a ring that cost more than most people's cars. It was all for show. All about appearances. All about impressing others. Jake's proposal was different. It was real. Intimate. Heartfelt. It was about us. Not about making a spectacle, but about choosing each other, fully and honestly. But here's where it gets interesting. Jake isn't just any veterinarian. His family owns a chain of high-end veterinary clinics across 3 states. His father is a renowned veterinary surgeon. His mother is a successful businesswoman who helped grow the practice into a thriving brand. And Jake himself. And Jake himself? He's brilliant. He has a doctorate in veterinary medicine, speaks 3 languages, and volunteers at multiple animal rescue organizations. He's also incredibly handsome, but not in a flashy, magazine cover way. Think less, corporate lawyer, and more, ruggedly handsome country vet who saves puppies for a living. The thing is, Jake dresses simply, jeans, flannel shirts, and work boots. He drives a practical pickup truck because of his job. He's humble about his family's wealth and success. If you saw him on the street, you might think he was just a regular working guy. And that's exactly how he likes it. He once told me, it helps people feel comfortable. When someone's dog is sick, they don't need a suit. They need someone who gets it. I never told my family any of this. After years of enduring their cruelty and judgment, I'd stopped sharing the details of my life. They never asked about Jake beyond his name. They never showed interest in meeting him, never cared about my happiness. So they had no idea who I was actually marrying. The contrast between Jake's family and mine was there. From the very beginning, it was night and day. Margaret and Robert invited me over for dinner just 2 weeks after Jake proposed. I was terrified. Years of criticism and emotional neglect had trained me to expect judgment from parental figures. But instead, Margaret greeted me at the door with a warm hug. She immediately complimented my earrings, simple silver studs Jake had given me for our anniversary. Robert shook my hand firmly and said, "We've heard wonderful things about you." During dinner, they asked me thoughtful, respectful questions about my work at the animal shelter, my college experience, and my interests. And they listened. Really listened. There was no side eye, no passive-aggressive jabs, no sighs or fake smiles. Just warmth. At the mention of my parents skipping the wedding, Margaret's face fell. "Oh, honey," she said softly, "I'm so sorry. But you know what? Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes, we get to choose our family. And we choose you." Robert nodded, his voice steady. "It would be my honor to walk you down the aisle, if you'd like." I started crying right there at their dinner table. Jake's sister, Amy, welcomed me just as warmly. She's a teacher, married with 2 young kids, and from the moment we met, she started including me in sister activities, shopping trips, girls' nights, family barbecues. She never once made a comment about my appearance or compared me to anyone else. When I mentioned being nervous about wedding dress shopping, she said, "We're going to find you something that makes you feel like the gorgeous bride you are." And she meant it. The dress shopping experience was everything I dreamed of as a little girl but never thought I'd have. Margaret, Amy, and 2 of my closest friends from college came with me. They cheered when I found the dress, a simple but elegant A-line gown that made me feel graceful and beautiful. When I stepped out of the fitting room, Margaret started crying. "Jake is going to fall in love with you all over again," she whispered. The memory stung. I remembered Macy's wedding dress experience so vividly, how she had taken Mom and 3 of her friends to a high-end boutique to try on gowns that cost more than my car. Mom had posted dozens of photos on Facebook, gushing about her princess and Macy's perfect figure. When I'd mentioned wanting to go dress shopping, Mom had simply sighed and said, "Well, we'll have to find something suitable." The implication was clear, I shouldn't expect to look like a fairy tale bride. But in that little bridal shop, surrounded by people who truly loved me, I did feel like a princess. For the first time in my life, I felt truly beautiful. The wedding day itself was perfect. Jake's family had offered to pay for a bigger event, but we both wanted something intimate and meaningful. We held the ceremony at a beautiful garden venue, surrounded by about 50 guests, mostly Jake's family and friends, along with my college friends and a few coworkers from the animal shelter. My entire family was busy that weekend, apparently. Jake's cousin officiated the ceremony, making it personal and heartfelt. When Jake saw me walking down the aisle on Robert's arm, he started to cry. The reception was filled with joy, laughter, good food, and dancing. Jake's grandmother's friends told stories about her and how she would have adored me. His college buddies gave embarrassing speeches about how Jake was a loyal, awkward dork who somehow landed someone amazing. My college friends spoke about how they'd never seen me as happy as I was with Jake. There wasn't a single moment where I felt judged, criticized, or not good enough. Every person there was genuinely celebrating us, our love, our story, and our future together. Meanwhile, my biological family spent that weekend at a lake house. They posted smiling photos on Facebook of their relaxing family getaway. Macy shared a bikini picture with the caption, "Family time is the best time." Mom commented, "My beautiful girls, except I wasn't there, so apparently, I didn't count as one of her girls anymore." She didn't even realize, or didn't care, that her other daughter was walking down the aisle the same day, starting a life with someone who chose her, completely and without condition. It stung. But Jake's family kept me so busy with love and celebration that I barely had time to dwell on it. We had a photographer friend take some gorgeous photos. Jake looked incredibly handsome in his suit, and somehow, I actually looked happy. Radiant. The photos captured pure joy and love. I posted a few of them on Facebook, mostly for my college friends and coworkers. I'm not usually one to share much online, but I was just so happy. I wanted to share that happiness with people who actually cared about me. That was 6 months ago. Yesterday, my phone started ringing off the hook. It started with Macy. She was screaming. "Why didn't you tell us your husband is rich?" Apparently, David had been scrolling through Facebook, probably looking at other women, knowing him, and stumbled across my wedding photos. He saw Jake in his perfectly tailored suit, noticed the vintage Rolex that belonged to Jake's grandfather, and something clicked. He started digging. Found Jake's LinkedIn. Then articles about the family business. Then financial records. And that's when it hit him, Jake isn't just some country vet. Jake is wildly successful. And comes from serious money. The kind of money that makes David's lawyer's salary look like a joke. But here's the kicker, and this is where, I admit, I almost feel bad for Macy. Almost. David lost his mind. According to Macy, who was sobbing hysterically, David started comparing her to me. "Your sister landed a doctor from a wealthy family," he said. "She's not even pretty. What does that say about you?" This, from the man who said he couldn't stand to be around me because of my appearance. Suddenly, he couldn't stop obsessing over Jake. Over me. Over how I had somehow landed someone out of my league. Macy said David had been acting strange for days, replaying our wedding video clips, staring at the photos, muttering about missed opportunities and settling too quickly. Then, yesterday morning, it all exploded. David told Macy he'd married the wrong sister, and that he wanted a divorce. She came home from work to find divorce papers on the kitchen table. His belongings? Gone. She called me in tears. Begging me to talk to Jake. Asking if he had any single friends. Wanting to know why I never told them about Jake's family. The same sister who once said I was too ugly for Christmas dinner was now hoping I'd set her up with one of my husband's friends. But it didn't stop there. Mom called next, suddenly very interested in meeting Jake and welcoming him to the family properly. She went on about how sorry she was they missed the wedding, how they'd love to host us for dinner. Then Dad called, talking about how family is everything and how they'd always supported my choices. He actually had the audacity to say, "I've always known you'd find someone special. I'm proud of you for landing such a catch." After that, it was like the floodgates opened. Aunts and uncles I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to reconnect. Cousins were asking for Jake's business card for their pets. Family friends were sending Facebook requests after years of ignoring me. But the most pathetic call came from Macy again. This time, she asked if Jake was hiring at any of his clinics. And, wait for it, whether he might be interested in dating her now that she was newly single and had always loved animals. Yes. My own sister asked if my husband might want to date her. I told her Jake was happily married. And I hung up. Jake thinks the whole situation is hilarious, by the way. He's been watching me field these calls with amusement, occasionally chiming in with things like, "Weren't these the people who were too busy to come to our wedding?" His family thinks it's ridiculous too. Margaret, his mom, said, "People like that are exactly why Jake keeps his background quiet." But here's what really gets me, they're not sorry. Not for how they treated me. Not for excluding me from Christmas. Not for calling me ugly or making me feel worthless for years. They're only sorry they missed out. On Jake's money. On Jake's status. On what they could have gained from being associated with someone like him. The phone calls that followed were surreal. Every conversation peeled back another layer of how shallow and calculating they really were. Macy's second call was the worst. She switched between screaming and sobbing, demanding to know why I never told them about Jake's wealth. "We're your family," she yelled. "You should have told us he was rich. We could have been networking with his family this whole time." I told her flatly, "You never cared about Jake. You never asked about him. You never even wanted to meet him. Why would I share personal details about someone you clearly didn't care about?" "That's not the point," Macy snapped. "You knew we could have benefited. Dad could have referred clients to his dad's clinics. I could have helped David's firm. You're so selfish, Anna." The irony was unbelievable. I was selfish, for not leveraging my relationship for their benefit. But they weren't selfish, for cutting me out of family events because I wasn't beautiful enough. Mom's calls were somehow worse, because of how fake they sounded. She kept using this syrupy sweet tone like I was a toddler. "Sweetie, we just want to be part of your happiness. We're so proud of you for finding such a wonderful man. When can we meet him properly? I want to cook his favorite meal." I reminded her that she told me not to come to Christmas because my face would ruin things. She actually said, "Oh honey, you know I didn't mean it that way. I was just trying to protect you from David's rudeness. You know how some men can be uncomfortable around, well, different types of people." "Different types of people?" I repeated. "You mean ugly people, Mom. That's what you said." "Don't put words in my mouth, Anna. I never said that." Dad's approach was more subtle, but just as transparent. He tried bonding with me over Jake's success. "I've always known you were smart enough to recognize a good man," he said. "Successful people find each other." He kept steering the conversation toward Jake's business, asking about expansion plans, wondering if they needed legal counsel. When I pointed out that he'd never cared about my judgment before, he got defensive. "That's not fair, Anna. I've always supported your decisions. Maybe I haven't expressed it the way you wanted, but I've always wanted the best for you." "The best for me was being excluded from Christmas?" I asked. "That was a complicated situation," he said. "David was going through some personal issues, and we thought it would be better for everyone if we kept things simple that year." The rewriting of history was breathtaking. Suddenly, I hadn't been excluded because of how I looked. No. It was about David's personal struggles and keeping things simple. Meanwhile, Macy kept texting, switching between blaming me for hiding Jake's background and begging me to help her get back at David. Somehow, Macy actually said, "We're sisters, we should stick together." This, from the same sister who once agreed I was too ugly to be around her husband. In one particularly unhinged text conversation, she wrote, "You don't understand what it's like to have your whole life fall apart. David was my security, my future, my status in this town. I need Jake's help to get back at him. His family has connections, they could ruin David's reputation completely." When I didn't respond, she followed up with, "Fine, be selfish. But remember, when Jake gets tired of playing house with you and realizes he could do better, don't come crying to me. Rich men don't stay with ugly women forever, Anna. He'll figure that out eventually." That actually made me laugh. Even in her desperation, Macy couldn't resist trying to tear me down. It was like she was incapable of seeing me as anything other than the inferior sister. The extended family calls were just as revealing. Aunts and uncles I hadn't spoken to in years wanted to catch up. They asked questions about Jake's family business. Were we expanding into their area? Did Jake need local contacts? My cousin Lisa, who unfriended me after high school because she said I brought down the family's image, called to ask if Jake was hiring. She had just graduated from vet tech school and thought it would be perfect if we could work together. And yes, Macy called again. This time asking, again, if Jake might be interested in dating her now that she was newly single and had always loved animals. I kid you not. I told her Jake was happily married. And I hung up. Jake was in the room when I took the call. He kissed my forehead and said, "Good. Because I'm taken by the most amazing woman in the world." Then he suggested we plan a trip to Europe for Christmas instead of dealing with any more family drama. Yes, this man really is too good for me, and somehow, I'm exactly right for him. But then it got weird. A week later, Jake came home with a strange look on his face. A woman had shown up at his clinic asking if he was married to Anna Mitchell. It was Macy. She'd driven 2 hours to accidentally run into him. She brought her dog, who wasn't even sick, and spent the whole visit flirting. She asked about private tours of the clinic. She asked if he was happy in his marriage. Then she said, "Sometimes people settle too quickly, and don't realize what they're missing." And then, she said it. "I've always thought you were too good for Anna. If you ever want to see what a real woman looks like, I'm available." Jake shut it down. He told her he was happily married to the most beautiful woman he'd ever met, charged her for the visit, and asked her not to return. But she didn't stop. She started showing up near our house. At our grocery store. At Jake's morning coffee spot. At my gym. So, we installed security cameras. 2 weeks ago, we caught her on camera at 11 p.m., trying to peek through our windows, taking pictures of our house and our cars. Jake called the police. They issued a formal warning for trespassing and stalking. Macy cried. Said she was going through a hard time, and just wanted to understand what made me so special. The officer told her that her hard time didn't justify stalking and that if she came back, she'd be arrested. But the universe wasn't done. Remember how I said Jake's mom, Margaret, is a successful businesswoman? Well, she also sits on the board of directors for several companies, including the law firm where David works. Margaret doesn't usually involve herself in drama, but when she heard what Macy had done, she was furious. She considers me family, and she wasn't about to let this go. Margaret made some quiet calls. Turns out David's law firm has a strict morality clause. Partners are expected to uphold certain standards, both professionally and personally. Getting divorced isn't the problem. But publicly declaring he married the wrong sister, humiliating his wife, and acting like a misogynistic mess? Not good for PR. But it gets better. Margaret also found out David had been having an affair with a paralegal, his subordinate, for 6 months. The firm had a zero-tolerance policy on relationships between partners and staff. Margaret didn't need to lift a finger. She passed on the info to the right people. David was forced to resign. So now, David is divorced. Unemployed. Facing a potential lawsuit for adultery, yes, Macy actually hired a shark of a divorce attorney, and Macy? Desperate and broke, she tried reaching out to my college friends. Told them some sob story about a family misunderstanding, and wanting to make things right. One of my friends pretended to be sympathetic and recorded the call. Macy admitted she was trying to break up my marriage. Jake's family lawyer was very interested. Apparently, what Macy was doing could fall under harassment and intentional interference with a marriage. Last week, Macy received a cease and desist letter, delivered to our parents' house. It ordered her to stop contacting us, visiting our regular places, interfering in our marriage. Violation equals criminal charges plus a civil lawsuit. So now my parents know exactly what their golden child has been up to. Dad left a voicemail, from a number I hadn't blocked yet, saying, "We don't condone what Macy's been doing. We're disappointed in her. We're sorry for the family drama. Too little, too late, Dad. And now, the best part. Jake's success and our marriage have become the talk of the town. People say, "Can you believe the veterinarian married Anna Mitchell? She's so sweet, and they seem so happy." Meanwhile, Macy is known as the woman who stalked her sister's husband. David is known as the lawyer who threw away his career over an Instagram photo. Their reputations? Trashed. And Jake and I? We're better than ever. This whole thing brought us even closer. Seeing how Jake protected me, how his family rallied around me, how none of them ever made me feel like I had to earn their love, it's been life-changing. We're planning to start trying for kids next year. Jake's parents are already preparing a nursery in their home. I have the family I always wanted. It just isn't the one I was born into. Last week, Jake surprised me with early Christmas presents, plane tickets to Paris and a reservation at the restaurant I've always dreamed of visiting. He smiled and said, "Beautiful women deserve beautiful places." I cried. Happy tears. Jake and his family love me unconditionally. Flaws and all. They see my worth without needing a reason. And that's what real family looks like. As for Macy, David, and my parents, they made their choices. Now they get to live with the consequences.